Today's guest is Pam Burch, the founder and operator of the Peacock Mercantile in Hettinger, North Dakota, which is a town of about 1,200 people. Pam is running a very kind of niche-y and unique little business. The Peacock Mercantile is a coffee bar and a bakery, and she's got a variety of gift items. That at its face wouldn't seem honestly that different, maybe. But what you're going to hear in this discussion with Pam is, for me, she was such a delight to talk to because I really believe in the power of getting clear on what your vision and mission and values are as a business owner. You know, why are you doing the work that you're doing? We get really hung up on the how, right? What are we doing and how are we doing it? You know, and those are the things that honestly can kind of be replicated. Those are the things that our competitors will likely try to steal, a method of doing something or a way of doing something. But nobody can compete with a really strong, meaningful, grounded vision. And that's what Pam has for the Peacock. And we talk a lot about that. It obviously is infused into every choice she makes, from vendor selection to how she treats customers. And it's the thing that gets her to get up every single day and get back into her business. And so I think for anybody listening, if you are a person that wants to start something new, her approach and how she tackled this piece of it is the work that matters more than all of the really tricky details, because it's the thing that's going to keep you going when people say no and when times get tough and when you find disappointments. It's going to be knowing why you started and what you're there to do. So she is a beautiful example of this. And so enjoy this chat with Pam, and don't forget to catch her Fast Five. Her Fast Five at the end of the episode here, she talks about the 5 lessons that she's learned. And there's a lot of gems that she drops in there that we don't cover in the main episode. So get yourself something delicious. I would encourage you to get some coffee, because we talk about coffee and the deliciousness of coffee in this episode. But enjoy this chat with Pam. She is a delight. Well, hey, Pam, welcome to the Growing Small Town Show.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
It's always super fun when I get to meet people that came at the recommendation of a listener. And that's how you came our way. So I'm so excited to visit with you. Browse your website a little bit. I can admit it, I've never been to your store. We were just talking about, we're about close probably to 5 hours apart, straight across the great state of North Dakota. So you're in Hettinger. And you own a business called the Peacock Mercantile. And I would love it if you maybe just share with us, you know, all we're going to talk about is like the Peacock and what it is and why you started it and where you're at. So just start wherever you want to start. And of course, I'll ask you questions because that's what I do. So tell us a bit about it, about yourself and about your store.
Sure. So I'm Pam Burch, and I moved to Hettinger in, 2017, May of 2017, just for personal reasons. And so came to this small little town, and at the time, I was working as a travel agent from home. I had 22 years in as a travel agent. Ooh. And working from home, coming to a new town, I kind of felt a little isolated, like, how am I going to get out and get to know people? I was also going to be turning 40 soon, and I started thinking about life, and I just hadn't really taken any, I felt like, giant risks in life. And so as I was here, seeing the town and what there was and what there wasn't, I thought, you know what, I really miss the coffee shops. I miss the coffee shops of Spearfish from when I lived in South Dakota. And so it more or less just kind of started out with just playing around with, oh, look, the buildings here are pretty cheap. Oh, you know, the real estate isn't that bad. So I ended up looking at a building, totally, again, not really thinking this would happen. But after looking at the building and then talking with my husband more and thinking more about just wanting to get to know people better in the community and not be just behind a computer screen, you know, dealing with customers from basically all over the globe, which was great. That was fine. But after 22 years, again, I'm turning 40, feeling like I needed a little bit of a change, we bought a building. So in October of 17, we bought the building on Main Street. It was a JCPenney building originally back in 1930. And
so was my building. That was what my building was JCPenney too. It's really cool, isn't it? Yeah. Like, it's a super common thing, you know? I mean, a lot of small towns had one. So that's cool.
So it was JCPenney's, and then, you know, throughout the years, there were several different other businesses, from pharmacies and a photography studio and stuff like that. But we ended up just diving in, and we just started gutting it down to the brick walls. And so we ended up taking about 22 dump truck loads out of the building. And so that was all completed by, our goal was to have it done by Christmas of 17 so that we could actually just enjoy a Christmas break.
So it's 2 months?
2 months.
Holy smokes, that's fast.
Yeah. So we got that all gutted, and then in January started construction. And I didn't even honestly have the thing fully funded. We had the building purchased, and the rest of it, I really was just kind of like, if God has called me to this, He'll bring me through it. And so I just moved one step at a time, got in touch with, people like the Small Business Association, work with our Adams County Development here in town, trying to figure out different ways to get funding, what grant funding was available. So there was a lot of different avenues I was pursuing all at once, in addition to, just a local bank.
Sure.
So ultimately, we ended up getting it all funded, and then it was June 1 was our grand opening day. We had a week at the end of May where we were doing just like practice runs, where we were training ourselves, we were making copies, just delivering copies for free, just so that we could have time to practice and be like, well, it was free, so if it was disgusting, sorry, we'll do better next time.
Oh, but what a great way to test it out, though.
Right, and to let people just get in and have a little peek about, what was
Right. Okay, so you just shared a ton, and I want to back up and ask a couple questions.
Sure.
Because first of all, I've already written down that clearly you are a person of faith. You brought that up already, which is fantastic. And I do think there's something to be said about that, because like these kinds of projects are not small and they're not simple. I think sometimes when we do these kinds of things in a small town, it feels really monumental because not every person's maybe doing something like that. But then it's also so important to somehow keep some perspective. Like it's, okay, so what's the worst that happens if it fails and all that kind of thing, right? But you obviously went into this with a certain level of faith. Like you said, if I'm being called to do this, He's going to bring me through it. And I love that. So that's fantastic. But backing all the way up to coming to Hettinger, why Hettinger? And you said personal reasons, which means you totally don't need to divulge it. But how big is Hettinger too? Just to give the listeners a frame of reference.
Sure. It's a small town. It's about 1,200 people.
Okay, yeah.
There's several, major businesses in town that help it be a kind of a central hub for smaller communities around the area. So I would say for maybe like a 75-mile radius or so.
Okay.
But there's a huge vet clinic. There's a hospital. So lots of, different industries that bring people in.
1,200 is a small town. Did you have any connections with Hettinger? I mean, again, you don't have to, whatever the reason is, you don't have to share it. But again, it's always those things, because I think if you're completely a transplant, which were you a total transplant, like a new comer?
Yes. So I grew up in Mott. I had several years.
Okay.
Mott, then in Dickinson, and then into adulthood, I was down in South Dakota. And so we're a blended family. So I have 3 older children, and their dad lives in Hettinger.
Okay.
So in an effort to make things easier for the kids coming into high school years, we
got it. Okay. And I only ask because I think people find their way to our small communities for all sorts of reasons. And I think sometimes we assume that unless you have prior connections, that you'd never land there. But that's just not true. Like there are lots of reasons why people pick our communities. And I always think it's fascinating especially when somebody that didn't have the ties does something like what you've done. So super cool. So again, which I think is often a theme with a lot of our guests, they've started something that filled a need they had themselves. Like you were like, oh, I miss coffee shops. And you thought to yourself probably like, coffee would make my day a lot brighter. And I'm sure it would do that for other people, right? So also, I love that you started by delivering coffee for free. I don't, again, think that people think that is an option often enough. Like, what a great way to test the quality of it. You're like, if it tastes terrible, we'll do better. But you're not going to know without letting people interact and engage with it. Yours is very specific in that it's coffee, but you get in time feedback and you can figure it out. And I think that's really special and really cool. So that was 3 years ago. right? You're coming up on
Yeah,
your...
we're coming in June of 21 will be 3 years.
Okay. So overall, also, I noticed in looking at your website, it feels, at least in reading, again, I've never been able to be there. That's my goal. One day, I swear, I'm going to just do like a growing small towns tour and like physically go to all the places if I wasn't able to get there. But clearly, you take seriously the role that the Mercantile plays in creating an environment for people. Can you share a little bit about what that is and why that was so important to you? Because it's clearly important just in how it even reads from your website.
Yeah. So, as you're going through a building process and really just letting it unfold, let the creativity unfold, let the mission and the vision unfold, because you want to have all of those things established for your business, but it's not something you can force. It's something that just has to, come from your own experiences in life. It has to come from your personality. And so it was really interesting how that mission and that vision came just through the hours spent in getting the building, and then the hours spent in envisioning what do I want this to look like. And I chose a mercantile just because we are a rural town, and mercantiles were basically the social hubs for small communities in the olden days. And so I was like, well, why recreate that, or why not recreate that, so that we can have those little social hubs where people can come just for coffee and to visit with a friend or have a lunch date. There's other options in town. There's cafes, there's a pizza shop, there's different options, but there wasn't anything that was more or less just a quick sandwich type of thing, all fresh, kind of more urban trendy type of food, but something that wasn't here at all. So I was taking a risk too on really, well, are they even going to like this food that I'm going to serve? It's got, it's a non-bread, or it's a, stuff that people hadn't heard of.
Sure. So, that is a risk. I can acknowledge that. That is a risk in a smaller community. But I'm guessing, again, I just think there's something to be said about it being unique, being different and being unique. And then because you have kind of this 75-mile swing, which honestly, all of us should be thinking like that. Like whether people naturally gravitate to your small town or not, I think we need to be thinking about, it's not just the 1,200 people that live right in your community. It's everybody around it. And I think when you give them something different, it's interesting enough that people will actually make that trek to check it out.
Yeah. And that's really what we've seen. I mean, over the last, couple of years, we have seen people from Bismarck making sure to swing through Hettinger on their way to Rapid City, things like that. So if you build it right and you have that culture that, drives people to be like, what is that? I got to check it out. They'll come, and if you do it to a point where it's not just, okay, I'm just going to fix up a little part of the room of this building or add on to this or add on to that. But if you go all in, you'll see the rewards. And we saw that, just even in the beginning months of people walking in, whether it was locals or, tourists, they were like, wow, why is this here? This should be in whatever, bigger town.
Yeah.
We even had Senator Kramer came and did one of his small town meetings that he likes to do, just across the state. And, he said, and it was just a huge compliment and very humbling, but he said that this rivals any coffee shop he's ever been to, across the United States.
Oh, so, wow.
Yeah. So huge compliment, but that's, it's not to me, it's to the one who gave me the vision for it. And I just love serving. I love being a part of the community, making people's day, whether it's, through that coffee or through serving them lunch. It's what gives me joy, is to just be interacting with people and serving them in this capacity. So,
well, what a gift you are to that community. I mean, that's just exceptionally cool. And I want to talk a bit more about the other things that happen in this space, because I don't know that we've actually just said, so you do coffee and you actually are a bakery, right? You bake your own products. Is that correct? Yep. And then obviously serve lunches. And I saw that you have $3 caramel rolls. And I'm like, oh, I actually looked at a number of your food items and I thought, oh my goodness, I would be there all the time. But you also have this heart for supporting local art, which totally speaks to me. Can you share a bit about what that has looked like and what role the Mercantile plays? By the way, do you call it the Mercantile or do you call it the Peacock, for short?
We usually call it the Peacock.
Okay, then I'll start calling it the Peacock. So the Peacock has a role to play in kind of celebrating and showcasing local art. What does that look like for you?
Yeah, so initially, when we first opened, we, just kind of put a call out to local artists. I checked out different local craft shows and vendor shows to see if, I could find anybody who kind of had something that would work for our store. And I did. I found, several different people who were either doing woodworking or photography. Some were doing blankets. We've had somebody making like coffee cozies. There's just a whole variety of different items that they were, willing to make and sell. And then we would just sell it on consignment for them. So we were giving them a storefront in order to showcase their products while also helping us as a new business because, funds are, by the time you're done with a project like this, funds are short. So then adding, some type of an inventory a retail inventory becomes a whole nother expense. And so those consigners basically really just helped us to fill our shelves, to make it unique, to add, a whole different element to it. And so now I try to rotate the consigners through. We have like a new photographer, some are painters. So I would say depends, 6 months to a year, we'll rotate it through.
Okay.
A lot of it depends on, too, if their product is moving or not moving, because ultimately, it's still wall space, it's still shelf space that has to, create a revenue. So
yeah, and there's something unique about the approach for consignment. Consignment's a really smart way to do this, I think. And also it's the newness. Even if stuff does move out fast, the idea that, especially if it's handcrafted and they're unique items, that feeling for people to constantly want to come in and check out what you've got. I mean, that's one of the best ways to keep people coming in, besides the fact that you're doing that with your food, of course.
That's absolutely true, because a lot of people will say, oh, where did that go? We're like, well, it already sold. Oh, I should have bought it yesterday. So it gives them the mentality, like, if I see something here, I need to buy it now because it's not going to be here tomorrow.
Right. Yeah, it's a good way to create that sense of urgency. Awesome. Okay. And I noticed too, do you do your own events, or is it just, because the one thing I happened to see was an art show on your website. Okay, I think it was a high school art show. Is that right?
High school art show, yes.
Okay.
So what happened is when COVID first hit, the high schoolers were supposed to be able to, have their art displayed in the school and have everybody come through and view it and stuff like that. But then with COVID, they couldn't. So we had to create a virtual or online, option for them to be able to showcase their art. So we just partnered with the school and put up a page on our website that then we could share out. So we did it that way. So it wasn't necessarily displayed in the store.
Oh, it was like a virtual art show.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, because even then, we weren't supposed to really have, people just meandering through. It was basically curbside or takeout.
Sure. Yep. That's really cool. That's really cool. So thinking about the core business of, coffee and baking stuff, did you know how to do all of that? Or did you have to do a lot of research to figure out? So it's funny. I just have to say this. I have thought in the back of my head, like, how great it would be to own a coffee shop. I feel like a lot of people have that thought. It was always fleeting. It wasn't anything I was ever going to act on. But I don't know that people always actually appreciate the amount of research and knowledge that a person has to have about coffee.
Right.
If you want it to taste good, especially espresso, right? It's a big deal. So I would love to hear, did you kind of already have a plan for that, or how did you go about figuring out what you wanted at the Peacock?
So I had 5 different coffee companies in North and South Dakota that I was testing them out both on, the quality of the coffee, the flavors of the coffee, and then just their service. Would they respond to my emails quickly? If I had a million questions, were they willing to answer them, or were they, going to pass me by? Things like that. So I kind of rated them all on that over about a 3 to 4 month period. And, just figuring out which ones were willing to train us, which ones were willing to install machines, service the machines. So that whole process, happened alongside everything else that was going on.
Right.
So then basically it just came down to reading books and, learning from these trainers about, how do you make the coffee taste great? Because I love coffee. I know how it should taste, but I wasn't ever the one on the other side, of that bar making it.
Yeah. And I think that's a really big deal. I mean, and by the way, I love your approach. I think this is really smart for anything that you might want to do, but something as central as the coffee you choose to brew. I mean, it's a super big deal. And I think it's really cool that you had kind of a system for how you were evaluating who you ultimately wanted to go with. So can you tell us whose coffee do you serve at the Peacock?
Yeah, we serve Dark Canyon Coffee. They're a roaster out of Rapid City.
Cool.
And they service a pretty wide area.
Well, and you're also showing and reminding everybody listening to this the value of just the internet. I mean, my goodness. So Rebecca Scott of Rebecca Scott Designs, she and I have done some podcasts together. She makes beautiful handbags in South Dakota. And she has said so many times, I've heard her say it every time she and I talk, she says it. It's like, if you have this idea that you want to do, just Google it. Like the idea that Google is just like right there. And like, you could probably find YouTube videos on how to properly roast coffee or brew coffee with a good roasted bean. But I just sometimes think people are like, well, I don't know how. And I don't know how, so I'm not going to do it. Well, of course you don't know how. But if you really care about it and you really want to do this thing, it's totally worth the research, don't you think? I mean, absolutely. Has that been a fun part of the journey for you because you love coffee so much?
Yep. It's been a huge part. And then just, getting it mastered to the point where people can taste the difference between a bad shot and a good shot of espresso. And they're like, oh, this one was phenomenal. Or they'll send you, a Facebook message quick, like this one was out of this world. And, it's training their taste buds too. So it's fun.
Yeah, that is really special. Okay. So how about baking?
So baking, I never went to chef school or anything like that. My mom was a phenomenal baker, so I learned from her. And I wouldn't even call myself a phenomenal baker. I think that we just take things that people in our areas, grandmas used to make, those feel-good types of foods and baked items, and we just make those because those speak to their heart. And so if you it doesn't have to be fancy. It doesn't have to be
right.
Over the top. It just needs to have that emotional attachment to something else within their life. And so if you get to know, just your community, where the roots are, if they're German, if they're Norwegian, whatever, make those things. And then of course you can always, fancy things up and put different twists on things. And they always enjoy that.
What would the Peacock be known for?
We would probably be known for the scotcheroos and the caramel rolls.
Scotcheroos, totally a Midwest thing. At least I think. Yep. I think it's a Midwest thing. But it looks and feels and sounds to me like coziness is something that's part of what you're hoping to infuse. Like what words or feelings? I mean, I could read it, right? I could read what you put on the website, but I would love to hear when you think about somebody coming into your space, what do you hope that they feel?
I just hope they feel like they're at home. Hospitality is just, number one. I want them to feel like they're walking just into my home or into my living room and, just enjoying a treat from, the coffee to the baked item or lunch to the music to the whole feel. I mean, there's couches, there's tables, there's, tall back chairs, and we try to just make little different spaces within the store so that even if it was a small group of ladies that want to sit in what I call our living room, they can do that, and just enjoy their time and sit for hours if they want.
Right. I would love to hear. So your Fast Five, we're going to talk about the 5 things you've learned in the last 3 years, which I think anybody that wants to start any sort of business like this is totally going to appreciate. But I just want to know, like, if you could think of one thing that's been the biggest surprise and or like / blessing that you've gotten. So maybe not a lesson that you've learned, but something that surprised you along this journey so far.
Probably the biggest surprise and blessing, they would just go hand in hand, is just how people will open up to you if you go towards them first with an open heart and an open mind and open hand. Being that hospitable person first. And in business, you're going to do that anyway. But I think as a life lesson, if we can just look at it as, if we can be that person first, there's so many people who are hindered to be open, to be vulnerable. But if you can be that person first, then it's just, all bets are off. People are amazing. They're amazing in their stories. They're amazing in what they do. They're amazing in how they give. So yeah, I think that's the biggest blessing that I get out of it, is just getting to know people's hearts and where they're at and what makes them tick. And, as you go further down the road, they will open up, a little more about what their dreams or their aspirations are. And so then you can just encourage them in it and be like, go do it. Do it.
Right. I love that so much. It's funny. You've talked about a number of things that are kind of core to who I am, at least who I want to be and how I want to show up for people. But I've actually said that the only two things I want out of the people that decide to work with me in whatever capacity is an open mind and an open heart. So the fact that you said that, it's just like, oh, and it is so cool. And I do think that there is something really to be said about showing up the way you want, kind of giving them that permission to respond in kind. I think the Midwest, again, we're very stoic. And I think we all have hopes and dreams and struggles and aspirations on our hearts, but sometimes it's not something we feel that it's permissible, I guess, to talk about or to share. So I think that's really, really beautiful. I think my last general kind of question about the business and what you've been up to is just, how has social media, has that been a huge part of what you've done? Or does it feel like a lot of the success of your business has just come from word of mouth? I mean, I'm sure it's both, but
I think it's
just curious.
I think, social media, having that Facebook platform, and then, Google, being on the Google Maps, making sure tourists can find you, whether it's through Google, there's so many different facets that people will use, and especially tourists. Like, don't underestimate the power of the tourist looking just on Google of, something to do as they're driving down the interstate. I cannot even begin to tell you how astounded I was at the number of people that would come through Hettinger, North Dakota on the highway just because there was something different to see or do. So don't underestimate that at all. I totally did.
Yeah. That's great advice, Pam. That is great advice. I think, again, it's so easy to think to yourself, well, it doesn't really matter. It doesn't really matter if out there can find me because I'm a local business. And I get that. But what you're speaking about is so important. And if I could, I hope people listening really take that away. It's like small towns too. People are somehow going to land near or around your town. And that's exactly what they're going to do. That's what I do. That's what we all do. We go somewhere and we Google things to do near Hettinger, North Dakota, or things to do along this route. I mean, everybody does that. So if you can't be found, they're not going to swing in and see you.
Exactly. They'll just pass you right by. And then the bigger, the more then you have to take it. So you're a small local business in your own little town, but now you also have the ability to affect the whole rest of your town. So other businesses, other restaurants, the grocery store, the hotels, all of that, if you can create that community and that environment where people, let's stay overnight here instead. We thought we were just going to keep going. This was going to be a pass through, but now you've created a place where, hey, let's stay and check this out for 24 hours. That's the bigger picture and the bigger goal that as a business person, you really do have to have in mind, because the longer they stay, the more they're going to play and ultimately spend.
Right. And then it becomes a destination they want to make sure they stop at on their anytime they're near or around. That just seriously cannot be overstated enough. Because what I think is cool is, I asked, what do you think has been more? Is it, word of mouth and it's social media? Well, it's both of those things together, because that's all social media is. It's just a bigger, broader channel for word of mouth advertising, right?
Yeah,
people listen to what their friends suggest they do. That's how it works.
Yep.
So that's really cool. And I would say great advice.
The word of mouth and social media and just being available on the World Wide Web, because you have capacity to reach people you never imagined.
Right. Did you have anybody when you were first starting that thought your idea was crazy and told you so?
Yeah.
Did you have a lot of that?
Yeah, we had a lot of that and a lot of, just naysayers, because, you go back to rural communities and we get kind of stuck in a different mindset. And so they'll be open for 6 months and it's going to be just another one of the fails that, is on the long list of fails throughout time and eternity. But that's fine. I was like, well, I guess if I fail, it's not your financial strain, it's mine. And so that's kind of how I would just address it. And, thanks for your concern, but if you keep buying coffee, maybe I'll still be open in 6 months. So there was a good set of naysayers, but I don't choose to live in that space. So
I know. I think the danger is if we think that somehow everyone's going to get it or be on board with it when they're just not. Like this is just super common. Have any of the naysayers that were vocal that you remember, have they become fans?
We have lots of fans. Yes.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure.
Now they're daily customers.
I feel like that is the best thing it's the best thing to hear, that the people that maybe were not on board and were maybe even vocally kind of in opposition of what you were doing, they're going to benefit from what you're doing anyway. That was actually a partner of mine said that to me, like with this project that we're doing down here. He said, the people that are trying to stand in the way are telling you that you're going to fail. He said, the great thing is you can kind of just like love them anyway, because he said they're going to get swept up in the positive change, the current of what you're creating anyway. And one day they may realize that they've been swept up and they'll actually get excited and then climb into the boat with you. But like you're chartering a path, through a body of water, and they're going to be part of it, whether they even get it or not. So that was really helpful. And I think it's important for people to hear that you can't actually, like you said, they're not going to pay our bills for us.
Right.
Technically, if they buy coffee, they pay part of your bills. I mean, I get that, but sometimes you have to show people, because it is hard. I think sometimes in small communities, it's hard for people to have kind of that limitless mindset of what's possible and opportunity. We're a little bit more hardwired to think of all the things that'll go wrong.
Yep. Up on our wall in our store, I have our mission statement very plainly posted so that they can all read it. And it's just that each community member would be a catalyst for positive change within their sphere of influence. So trying to get people to recognize that you have the power within yourself to influence your own sphere that will, help produce change and produce positivity and just produce a different mindset, because mindset is huge. If we constantly live in a negative mindset, we're not going to ever do anything.
Yeah. Oh, I love that so much. Where did that come from in you?
That's one of those things that, I feel like I said, the mission and the vision, I really feel like God just kind of spoke into me, because one day it was even, I don't know, I think it was maybe like 2 months before we opened, all of this, because I'd been dwelling on this. What should the vision be? Well, I knew what the vision was going to be, but I didn't have the mission statement, just that one little line of what is it? One day I remember telling my manager, Amber, she was a huge help in doing all of this. And I just said, I've got it. I said, get a pen. And I just rambled it off. And I'm like, that's what it is. It's to, let each person within this community recognize that they have the power, to be a catalyst for positive change within their sphere of influence. And so we added a couple of coffee things, like one sip at a time, you can,
right,
that change. But it just, I think that that's really just what, the Lord has just given to me, that just bubbles up. And that's what I hold on to, that's the core for me.
Yeah. And that's what I love about it. Well, okay, two things. It's like that encapsulates a lot of what I think is possible. And that's actually what I think is a community's way forward, is that the more people that tap into their unique gifts, their unique talents, and choose to contribute those. And so small towns, we have a responsibility to create those avenues without saying it has to walk, talk, and look exactly like this. It needs to be like, what do you want to do? And how do you want to show up? And then we need to give people countless ways to do those things, right? Exactly. And that's what I think is like the entire way forward, economically, emotionally, physically, spiritually, all of it for communities. Yeah. That's what growth looks like to me. So totally love that you've made that your mission. And I also love, and I think for small business owners or aspiring small business owners that may be listening to this when we air this, is to remember that a mission statement is actually, it can actually be the guiding force behind all the choices you make, the hiring choices you make, down to your vendors, the people you choose to have represented in your store or whatever the business might be, but to live and breathe it.
Yeah, it's your roadmap, because
It
when those
should be, right?
come your way, you have to have something to hold on to. You
Mm-hmm.
have to have your thing that's like, no, this is what I'm clinging to. This is what I believe, and this is what I'm doing.
Well, yeah.
But I'm moving forward.
Right. Well, and I think too, it keeps us grounded when our own internal naysayers kick up, because it happens, right? I mean, those doubts don't only come from the outside, they come from inside. We have a hard day, or we have a bad month, or COVID hits. I mean, let's be real. That was just it's a brutal thing to have to deal with when you make your money based on people walking into your store. It's a really, really challenging thing, but yet here we are. We're not through it, but I pray we're through the worst of it as far as, the direct impact on small businesses, right? Like hopefully the lockdowns are over and all of that. But here you are still smiling, still doing this because you love it, still showing up for yourself and for your community and for the people that work for you. Yeah, I am so grateful that you got put in my path. It's a very inspiring story. And I think the thing is, I want to say this, there's going to be a gentleman, his episode will be dropping here in a week or two. And he had said to me something that, so this show is all about finding people like you, Pam, that are doing what I think is something that they're on fire for. I mean, it isn't just, you don't have to have a business to be on our show. That's not how this works. It's the person that chose to do it in a small town, whatever that might be. And he had said he's a rural sociologist is actually what his degree is in. And he works for the extension office at the University of Minnesota. And in his episode with me, he said, I want us to start to get that, like success stories like you, Pam, you are not the exception. Like you're exceptional, of course. Like that's why I'm excited to visit with you. But like we keep talking about it like, wow, that's just so special and unique and nobody does that, when really every small town is filled with people like you. Yeah. And that's what I want people to see, that it's possible for them. You know what I mean? Like I don't know if we want to minimize the coolness of what you're doing, because it's fantastic, but
but to get people to recognize that if you've got that, what's holding you back? What is holding you back from just doing it?
Amen. Yeah. Like think,
we'll keep pushing the doors,
Exactly. The way to get these things figured out financially, there is always an answer.
Yep.
Truly. And I know that sounds so cliche to people, but I'm in the middle of it. I'm in the middle of, you have a beginning or an end where you're in it and you're working. We're renovating. We're in the middle of that. And every single bill that comes along that I was like, didn't expect that expense. It's terrifying. I mean, it's totally terrifying. And yet at some point you have to say, okay, well, what's the alternative? Like fold now? That's just, it's crazy. So there's something to be said about the commitment too. Yeah. Like making the commitment, deciding you're going to figure it out and working hard at it. And then at the end, like you said, if this doesn't work out, and there's air quotes around that, do I call that a failure? I refuse to say that, and I think
I wanted to try, and if it didn't work, then so be it.
Then we figure out the next thing. Right. Yeah. Such an important mindset, I think. Well, like you talked about it, mindset is, well, I don't know how much of it you would attribute, but it's a ton.
It is a ton.
Training.
I call it like strength training of your brain.
Absolutely.
Not think on the, negative things, but to constantly be, okay, I hit this roadblock. How do I get around it? It's super creative and brainstorming and surrounding yourself with people who can help you in those moments. Okay, well, here's the roadblock, so I need some help, guys. And having, a little core team of people who've got your back and who can help you, push through it.
Yeah.
I hit roadblocks. Absolutely. It wasn't easy. I'm not saying this was all roses getting open in 6 months, from gutting.
Oh my goodness.
Funding it to being open. I look at that number now in 6 months, and it's like, well, that was just like unheard of. That's impossible.
Yeah. And yet you did it. Well, and that's the thing too, is I think it's so important to normalize disappointments. Like, because disappointment and things not going the way we think they're going to go is like a totally normal part of this whole thing. And I think if we stop catastrophizing them and instead just kind of say, okay, like you said, it's a roadblock, but the road is still there and I still have somewhere I'm trying to get. And I just have to figure out, I always joke like, can't go over it, can't go under it, can't go around it. Like, so what are you going to do? And I had said like, I don't know, 10 questions go, like kind of the last thing, which is funny. That's totally who I am. I just more questions come. But you just touched on something that I think is also really, really central to finding success in whatever a person might be endeavoring to do. And that is being surrounded by people that can be that they probably play a little bit of devil's advocate at times. They challenge you. They don't let you get too down. They cheerlead you. They champion you. Like there's a bunch of stuff that I think people like you or a business owner needs. Were you able to find that right in Hettinger? Do you have the people you need right there? Or how did those people come to be part of your support system?
Yeah. So one of them was a friend from Fargo. And so she's a longtime family friend. Oh, she makes me get choked up thinking about her, but she's a huge wealth of help and a huge cheerleader. And then the other people I started getting in touch with after I got a hold of the Small Business Association, and Laura Weber helped me. And then she kind of put me in touch with some other people. So then like Melena Howe, she was a huge asset, and she is still just a great friend and a resource who's with what she's got for ideas. And then our Adams County Development Corporation executive director, she came in a little bit later because she had just moved to town and taken the position. But all of them, I mean, it doesn't have to be a huge team, but just each gifted with the same type of passions and then the same, type of vision to move a community forward. And so, yeah, they're great.
It's interesting. I think one of the ways, and I would love to hear if you agree with this, or, part of it is being willing to stand out in the truth and the light of what it is that you want to create, because you have to somehow be vocal about it or out loud about it for people to be attracted to it. Do you know what I mean by that? Like, I've heard it, called planting a flag. Like, this is what's on my flag. Everybody can see it. People driving by, like metaphorically, right? They're driving by and they see, oh my gosh, she cares about that. I care about that. And then it's like a homing beacon for those people. That's how it's gone for me. Like, and just being willing to say, who else do you know that thinks the way you think? Like, who else should I be talking to? And man, I have met, that's the coolest part for me in this last year. We're not going to be open until hopefully May 1st is when we hope to open our local space. And it's just, my life has been tremendously blessed in the last year and a half. As I've been working through this, as I've been forging ahead, right? The people that I've met, it's been nothing short of, it's like every day I just say, how did I get so blessed? Like what did I do to deserve that person coming into my life?
And sometimes there are people who are, in your life for just a season, maybe it's 6 months or a year, but they've catapulted you to a new level of something within the business that had a need. And that person just showed up to fill it. It's like little angels just showing up. And
that's how I feel about them.
Yeah, exactly. Because otherwise you think, oh, where am I going to find, this kind of help in rural America? And then boom, there's somebody right there, and they're there and then they're gone.
Yeah. So. It's a very special thing. And I think clearly you get the value of it being almost everybody's place. Like it's your place, but you've designed it and created it in a way that people get to collaboratively be a part of everything you do and what comes next for them.
Yeah, because you ultimately, again, the ultimate goal is to inspire them to do something in their community as well.
Right.
If you've said countless times on here, we all have a role. There's all, a purpose for each one of us. So it's sometimes just helping people learn that, first of all, there is a purpose for you. And what you can do, what is it you're passionate about, and just helping guide them, in that path from the 2-minute conversation you have from them at the till to the time you hand them their coffee, and, just inspiring them one sip at a time.
That's amazing. You are such a gift. I'm so thrilled to have met you. I cannot wait. I'm going to have to come to Hettinger. I mean, there's just no question. There's no question. I've got people all along that route that I need to see. So I can't wait. We'll take selfies and we'll just blow it up all over social media. But we absolutely will share the Peacock Mercantile's social links and all of that in the show notes. So we encourage people to check those out. And then they should check your Fast Five, where you share kind of the 5 biggest things you've learned taking on such a specific business in a small town. Thank you so much for your time, Pam. I hope I get to meet you in person real soon.
Wonderful. Thank you for having me.